because what's out in the cage is great. But if you can't duplicate it in the brooder, then you're not breeding, you're hatching.
Who's got chickens? Who's got quail? Who's got hatch rates off the scale? From brooders, coops, and mystery birds, you're listening to Poultry Nerds, talking eggs and talking birds. Science stories, tips you've heard. Welcome to the Poultry Nerds.
Believe it or not, this is another listener request. We're getting lots of those.
And I like it.
I do, because it's what people need. And instead of us just rambling up here sometimes, we want to give people what they need to know.
Yeah.
So everybody's going to assess their stuff differently. So I think it's a very subjective topic, and we will give the information that we do and then put that together with what other breeders may say and find what works for you.
Yeah, I think for some people, they're going to be more tender-hearted than others because everybody wants to keep the cute little things. But you got to remember a couple of things. I try to remember that I run a breeding program, not a hospital. And with that, I'm always looking for something better than what I have. So that's part of my selection. I want better everything.
The slides, I think, are not in any necessarily order. These are just 10 things to look at. Fertility, that is going to be important. So right now, I have a project going on. It's part of the study that I'm working on, and it's also part of the new line that I'm developing for fall. And right now, I am down to tracking fertility. And
Wait, you got a new release coming out in fall?
I do.
Can you tell us what it is?
The quail.
Sweet.
I can tell you the email subscribers will get first dibs on being able to order it.
Okay, that's something.
Yeah.
Always and subscribe.
Always the email subscribers get it first. So right now I have the line getting pretty close to where I want. And so I'm checking fertility. And it's not just fertile eggs, but are the chicks actually hatching and are they vigorous? So we want that information because you don't want to be getting 50% hatch rates off of your own eggs. That would not be cool. And I'm down to checking that. And so fertility is something that you need to track, and you need to track it pen to pen or breeding group to breeding group and see if it's different. And then also you have to know how old these birds are. So for example, Saturday I set 2 trays, and one was the parents to the next generation of breeders. And I'm going to run that side by side and see if the fertility is different on the older birds, which I know it will be, and what the hatch rate is, dead in shell, fertility rate, vigorous rate, how many die in brooder. That all that information is necessary to move a line forward.
That's one of the reasons why it's really important when you're doing this to number your eggs, number your cages, your sets, however you've got it done. Make sure you do that and set everything. A lot of times people are iffy about different things, but to me, when I want to get a good grasp on what it's like, I will collect everything that comes out for a week and I will set everything that comes out for a week. And I make notes of what looks how. And if the eggs aren't beautiful, but the chicks are amazing, I might let that slide. But I want to look at all of them side by side.
And don't forget, now you know I'm a fan of the painter's tape. Don't forget to write on the painter's tape why you are setting those particular eggs, because 3 weeks passes and you have forgotten what the purpose of that is. So on the painter's tape, I write down what cage they came out of, their set date, their hatch date, and then I write a little check mark, check fertility against whatever. You cannot write too much down, but you can underwrite information. So make sure you write everything down that you could possibly need to know later. And don't rely on your memory. That goes out the window.
That'll go out the window quick.
So hatchability, we want these chicks popping out vigorous. We want them coming out ready to go. We want them coming out on time. So this is going to be where we are kind of where you tell me I'm ruthless, because the early ones I'm not concerned about, and I don't allow late hatches. So I want them to come out on time. Those are the ones that I want to grow up. The ones that listen to me and do what I tell them to do, and on the time schedule
That's
I want them
right.
to do it.
That is teenagers, take note here. That is exactly right.
Yes. And then I get a lot of people who like to criticize my brooder setup. And I know that you like the bigger brooders, but the little brooders that I use, because I use those tubs if you haven't seen them. And what are they, 18 inches by 12 or something along those lines? And I only put one kind of bird in each one. And then the painter's tape follows the birds. But by brooding them separately, that allows more feeder space. It allows less competition for food and water and heat and living space, but it also allows me to run the brooder side by side so I can get a more like I can compare them better.
Yeah, it's a more even playing ground. When I'm getting nerdy and scientific, I really like the small brooders. With the small brooder, it allows you to look and see. You can just put a few here and compare apples to apples. To whereas if you, let's say you're working with fees and you got two different cages, but you put a few from this cage here, a few from this cage and the one next to it, and you can literally stand there in one spot and look at cage A and look at cage B's birds, chicks that hatch off, and it lets you see what you got. Because what's out in the cage is great, but if you can't duplicate it in the brooder, then you're not breeding, you're hatching.
Okay, so now we're going to assess the chick quality. And I'm going to say this, and people will probably turn me off as soon as I say this, but don't medicate them. Don't hospitalize them. Don't hobble them. Don't put them in shot glasses. Now, one caveat to that, if you are just getting started and these are your starter birds, and you need that bird to make a full set, okay, do what you need to do to get started.
Yeah.
But once you're started, don't do it anymore. Let the week go, put them in the freezer, make them snake food, put them in the wood, make them critter food.
Dog food.
Dead, don't let them suffer. So you don't want those birds in your breeding program. So the culling starts in the hatching basket. You want birds that are on time and are vigorous, and everything else has to go. End of the conversation.
Man,
That is how you get lines that stand up to time.
and that's how you get lines that, again, you could ship some birds, some eggs all the way across the country, and somebody could play soccer with them on the way over there, and you're still going to have a decent hatch because you have strong, vigorous birds that
You
carries
know,
all the way through the egg.
you don't want to save any splay legs. Those are out. Prospect is out. Anybody that looks not right is out. You just have to do it. And to make a strong line, that's what you have to do, because your genetics will only be as strong as your weakest bird.
And
Because
everybody talks about they want to find ways to save money on feed. Don't be afraid to cull the weak.
exactly.
If you're not feeding them, they're not on your feed bill.
You want to make sure they're not knock-kneed. This is a stock picture, but I liked it because the legs are straight. That's what you want to see. You want to see a nice, wide, straight bird. And we've talked about selection with the breast and the other chickens and such, but the
Mhm.
same principle applies here. You want a nice, wide, sturdy, balanced bird from the get go. This is actually my bird. Temperament and handling. This bird just laid in my hand while I was spreading its wings from underneath. And that's what you want. You want a bird that can be handled. It is no fun for you or anybody else, or the bird for that matter, to be in a constant state of fright or flight or fear or
Whatever it is.
yeah, it's not a good situation for anybody because you won't enjoy dealing with them. And you don't want to be snapped at or bit at or I don't know.
I don't even like to be pooped on.
No, that's not good either. I don't like it either. So for me, if I am moving birds from the grow out pen to the breeders, if I can't even handle them in such a way that I can hold them and analyze what they look like, how much they weigh, if they're straight, if whatever we're looking at, which we're going to get to here in a minute. But if I can't even handle them, I'm done with them. I have very short attention span on that. So
I've been sorting birds and going through and making selections, and the ones that just act psychotic and jump around like a spaz. If I have this thing, if you jump out of my hands and act like a doof, then if a pig gets you, the pig gets you. Because I don't want somebody to be like, oh, I got birds from Carrie and they're a bunch of spazzes. I don't want that. So,
you're gonna always have the oddball. So
yeah.
when you buy eggs from me or from you or from anybody, you're not looking and go, okay, there's 1 out of 50 that's a spaz, so their line sucks. You don't wanna do that. You're looking at the line overall because if every bird that came out was perfect, then we need to charge more.
That's
But
right.
there's culls in every batch. So go back and listen to the selection podcast that we've done before. If you can get 10%, 20% is good enough to go into a breeder pen. Now that's on chickens. So you might get a little bit more on quail, but you're doing really good. And that's why we raise them for meat and eggs is because you've got to have a place for those culls. If you're not culling, you're not breeding. You're just reproducing because there's no standard that you're putting forth. And temperament is one of those inheritable traits. You've got to be able to handle the birds in order to assess them. Longevity in the breeder selection. This is in here, but that's a hard one because that's really going to be dependent, I think, on how you keep the birds. I think
Mhm.
people who may keep them aviary style and don't like their birds, they're gonna get longer lifespans out of them, but less usefulness per se. They're gonna be more pets. You're gonna feed them and water them half of the year and not get any eggs out of them. So if you keep them in cages like we do, then yes, we're running them a little bit harder, but it's a business. We're trying it's a catch-22. So, we're running them a little bit harder. We just are, it's a fact. And
Mhm.
we light them, we feed them, we give them airflow, ventilation, but we also know that we're not gonna get 4 years out of a bird. In general, when they start looking kinda rough, I usually cull them out because they don't look like they're
They don't look like I want them to look.
but they're no long like, they aren't happy, and I don't wanna prolong that. Okay.
Yeah. When they start losing a whole lot of feathers and looking kind of rough, that's not a happy life. That's when I start looking for the replacements as well.
And so, when we cull out, which I do cull out a lot because I feed my dogs, and so it's not always the younger roosters. It's a lot of the times I'm constantly replenishing my breeders just because I know I'm not gonna get a year or 18 months out of them, and I don't want to prolong any uncomfortableness on their behalf. It's
Yeah.
hope that makes sense to somebody. So, depending on your need and why you're raising the birds and how you're raising the birds and what you're willing to what's the word?
Except.
Yeah, accept. As their quality of life, that is how their lifespan is gonna go. I pulled a hen out yesterday, as a matter of fact. She's not old, she's maybe 12 weeks, but the cage was already starting to wear on her joint. So she's in a coal pen because she's not going to be comfortable for a length of time.
Our
And
parents in there too.
no. Or when her cousin, you've gotta be conscious of those things, their quality of life at the same time. So, longevity and breeder selection could or could not be important depending on your purposes for raising them. Okay, egg production consistency. This is easier to gauge the less birds that you have. So in the egg rollout trays, if you've got 15 hens, say per level, we're peak season, there's 15 hens in there, then you're getting 13 eggs per day. I think you're doing okay. I would not pay much attention to what's going on in that cage. But if you have 15 hens and you're older ones and you're getting 6 eggs a day, then I will get down and really dig around in that cage and see what's going on in that cage. Is somebody hobbling? Is somebody being picked on? Are they aging out? What's going on in there? Pick up everybody and see who's losing weight. That's usually a really good indicator. The older birds will get pretty light because I don't know, they start laying down more and they quit eating or whatnot. So, you can usually, even though I have so many of them out there, I can just put my hand in there and just pick up each one, and I can tell you who's not thriving anymore or producing or eating or anything. I mean, you know what a healthy bird feels like or should feel like, and if they're n if they don't feel like that, then it's time to remove them from the breeding program because they're not laying and they're eating and they're taking up space. At the end of the day, for my purpose and your purpose, the birds are business, but they also feed my animals and I ship the hatching eggs. So I have to balance that. I have to balance that against everything. And I do my best. It's easier in June than it is in March, for sure.
Definitely.
But it's always a concern of what's going on in each stage. And right now, I am downsizing the birds for the summer. So when you're shipping eggs, the number of birds you have ebbs and flows with the season. And so we've hit peak and we're coming off of that now. And so I'm culling out the old breeders is what I'm doing right now. The ones who aren't thriving anymore. And
Dog food.
yeah, exactly. I make dog food and we still have the same number of cages. So what I'm doing is I'm coming all the way down to where there's 5 birds per level. So they have a lot more space. Everybody has more airflow in the heat of the summer. And I don't have to clean as much poop trays or feed as
That's
often.
different.
Yeah. And so I'm not downsizing the number of cages. I'm downsizing the number of birds in the cages. So they can stay cooler, they can have a little bit more space, and then I'll start back up in the fall and fill them back up again, and that's how it goes. So, egg production is depending on your setup. If you've an aviary setup, it's gonna be really hard to see who's laying and who's not. You'll have to pick up each bird and see how they feel and go from there, and then but at the same time, you also have to know, are they cutting down because of light or because you changed their food or for molt or this is really gonna be setup dependent
Yep,
and
it will.
takes a lot of education, but also observation. All right, I don't really want to talk about this for too long because we did an entire podcast on egg selection. And so this picture is actually from that podcast. So you can go back and watch that one. And we went through each and every egg, chicken and quail, and why or why not we would select those. But at the end of the day, you want properly shaped eggs, properly sized eggs, good shell thickness. But again, that's going to be dependent on bird age. You don't want to set double yolkers. You don't want to set first eggs. You don't want to set pointy eggs or torpedo eggs or round golf balls. Or so there's
None
a
of that
lot of
crap.
things. Yeah, there's a lot of things going on in there. These ones are all misshapen, yucky eggs that would go out in the. I just throw them out the barn door at this point.
But there's so many different things that'll eat them.
I think everything on my property is pretty much sick of eggs. We have them everywhere. So, growth rate assessment. You want to weigh your birds. I'm going to be honest and say I don't weigh every single bird. I can
After you've
pick,
done it quite a bit, you
yeah.
just kinda know, "This one feels light. This one feels light. Oh, this one's good. Let me see what it actually is." You'll put it and be like, "Oh, wow, that's bigger than I thought." But doing that, you also adjust what you're thinking, so you get the feel of what it actually is when you do that, and it makes it to where you can know within an ounce or so of what they weigh just when you're moving it from one cage to another.
Yes, there's more to it than just their weight. You want to and again, this is gonna be dependent on your purposes. So, for this new line that I have coming out, this is a meat line, and so I'm not only weighing them, but when I pick them up, it's almost like I'm picking up a breast. I'm analyzing them the same way. The one thing that's different is on a chicken, when the tail comes up, the back shortens. And on a quail is called roach back. And so yesterday I would have looked funny to somebody who didn't know what I was doing, but I was just literally reaching in there to some I think they're about 10 or 12 weeks old. And I was just reaching in there and grabbing onto their backs. And I wanted to feel their spine as they were aging and make sure their spine was staying straight if they were going to stay in the breeding program because they may have looked fine when I put them in there. But you were here and I told you, I was like, there's a couple in there that I don't like. And so I pulled those two out. But then while I was in there, I went ahead and touched each one. And then I found another one. You can feel it's
I mean,
almost like
sometimes
a
their
crick
feathers
in their
can
back.
hide a lot.
It's like a crick in their back. And so they got pulled out. And you you can't when you're selecting to what can go. I used to when I first started, me and you had a conversation a few years ago and it was on the Orpingtons, but I was trying to select the best ones and pull them out and leave the rest. And I
Mhm.
couldn't. I couldn't do it. And so you suggested pulling out the bad ones and see what was left. And so that's what I do. I apply that to the quail too. So I put them, whoever makes it into the breeding program, but then I'm constantly pulling them out. Oh, I don't like you. Oh, you didn't. You're kind of too narrow. You're narrower than I remember you being. How did you get in there? Did I? Was I on the phone and put you in the wrong cage that day? Or
Or something
so,
changed. You
yeah.
could if you sort birds at 5, 6 weeks and then you wait another 6 weeks, that's a lot of time. Things change. And that's one of the ways that you really can fine tune quirks in your genetics is by periodically once a month or every month and a half, check them, look at them, pay attention. You'll
Yeah.
wind up with better birds, better quality. And that's the name of the game, whether you're trying to make money off hatching eggs, whether you're trying to feed your animals or your family, it's all about having better and doing what's good for the animal.
This particular picture here, I have three scales out in the barn. This particular picture here was somebody had questioned whether my celadons were jumbos, and this is a 7-week-old bird right here. And so when I move birds, it is at point of lay. So as soon as I start seeing eggs in the grout pens, that's when I sort them to breeders. So the celadons would lay a little earlier, but this heavier meat line that I'm working on, they're not laying until about 9 weeks. But that's to be expected because
Yeah. They're a
they're
bigger
heavier.
bird. There's more to mature.
Now, this is an AI picture, but what I wanted to show here was the straight legs. The wider the bird, the more structure that it has to have. And so when you're looking at them straight on right here, that you need to see that balance. No knock-kneed or pigeon-toed or splay-legged or
You
curling
know, just like with a
toes.
chicken, if it's something that'll disqualify the chicken from a show, then as a quail, it should disqualify it from your breeding program as well.
Yep, there's a reason why those are standards, and it's across the board. So, quail is the same way. You need it to be able to support itself. So, you don't want a 20-ounce bird on twigs. You want it on some structure there. And when you look at it head on like this, you want it to be balanced. And if you're looking at it from the side, it should also be balanced. You don't want it standing up like a penguin because its legs are set too far back or too far forward and its butt drags the ground or something. So
Yep.
it's got to be some balance to it. And the vent should be pointed out, not down. I've seen that on some pictures from people. And now the males, they're going to have a little bit more slope to them, but the females, that vent should be straight out. And again, like the back, like I said, it needs to be a nice balance to it, not that one I found yesterday had a point in the spine and it came up like that, and I pulled her out. So anything that if it looks off, pull it out. You don't wanna keep it.
Yep.
You only keep what you wanna breed forward.
If you look at the birds and say, "Why do I wanna feed you?" You know,
Yeah.
they look for reasons why,
Right.
because if they can give you reasons why to feed them, then feed them. If they can't, it's part of your selection.
But you can go yourself into a corner, so be careful with that too. You've gotta keep enough birds to move forward.
I like that bird.
I know. But also look at their heads. There wasn't really a slide for heads, and so make sure their head makes sense. We can talk about size and width and make all these things crow face or tiny eyed or I don't know, skinny head or whatever. The head needs to make sense to the bird.
Yeah.
And if you're growing a meat line or a heavier line where you're trying to make your birds jumbo, say I started my Pharaoh started as standards and I worked them up to jumbos, then the head width plays into that. So you need to look at things from end to end and make sure that they make sense. Now, the purpose of this slide is for what are you doing? If you're making a meat line, then the bird needs to be heavier and sturdier and wider and more roly-poly looking. And you know going into it that you're going to cull out most of them because that's the purpose of them. You're going to keep the best for breeders, but really at the end of the
Mhm.
day, you want to eat 90% of them. That's the name of the game. And so when people buy meat birds, for whatever reason, I guess they're thinking that, and I'm talking Cornish here, but you're going to get, if you buy 100 Cornish, you're going to get 100 perfectly shaped 6-pound birds. Like that's the deal.
She
You're not going to. You're going to
you'll get
get,
100 weirdos and,
you might get 50 perfect ones.
anomalies.
And then you're gonna get 20 dead ones, and you're gonna get 20 small ones and 20 giants because that's how genetics falls. And so when I'm creating the meat line, yes, I want in an ideal world to create consistency. That would be fantastic. But at the end of the day, the purpose of them is to eat 90% of them.
But you gotta
So
get them there and get them to where you want them to be before you can worry about consistency. Because if you want a 20-ounce bird, but you can't get there, consistency is not a thing. But once you get to where you're hitting that mark, hitting the goals that you've got for your program, that's when you need to fine-tune the consistency and make it where it's regular.
and I was really working towards that. But then one day I sat down and I was like, you know what? If Ross and Cobb and Van Griss and they throw billions of dollars a year at these birds and they can't get them 100% consistent, then I'm not going to get it in my little neck of the woods. I can aim for it and I can work towards it, but that's called breeding. And that's what we're doing.
Yep,
We're
you work
taking the
towards
risk.
it, but you gotta accept that they're not all perfect, and yeah, the point is to eat good. If that's what you're doing, and you're improving your line at the same time, that's a win-win.
And so this is the same concept as the breasts. And that's how I'm looking at the birds. Now, if you are creating a fun line, like a pretty colored line or a pet line, then your direction is going to be probably more temperament and color. You may not want jumbos because they eat more. You want a little bit more handleable. Is that right? Handleable.
Say
Han-
that 3 times fast.
you're probably gonna want standards if you just want pets, because
Yeah,
you don't need to feed a jumbo meat bird if you just want pets, or if you
true.
just want eggs. You can breed towards egg size. You can have a small bird and breed towards egg size, and then you don't have to feed a big bird to get a big egg. And just because it's a big bird doesn't mean it's gonna lay a big egg. My biggest bird up until now laid the smallest egg. Go figure. So you've got all of your reasons for growing the birds that you're growing, so you need to be realistic in your purposes. And there's no real wrong answer. If you're after gathering all of the colors, then and you don't want to feed meat birds, then don't do that.
Have fun with it.
Yeah, so select for what is driving your passion, basically. So that I guess I got ahead of myself. That was select intentionally. Yeah. So select towards what you're after. This is a Graufi. He was one of my biggest birds and until I went in the direction I'm going. But yeah, they were big birds and they eat a lot. But guess what? Nobody wanted to buy them because they're not feather sexual. So they're leaving. Actually, I'm getting rid of them. But it was a big bird. Beautiful birds, actually. I really liked them, but I guess I was the only one that liked them. So,
Yeah, there's something for that too.
and that's back to running a business. You have to make business decisions. I don't need that bird because any bird, they'll look the same with the skin off. So, doesn't matter what color it is to me. The color has never been something that has driven my quail journey, actually, except for the sparkly feet. That's what this is right here. That's let's go back and look at that one.
Except for
I've been working on sparkly feet for a couple of years, and I hit a dead end on the first time, and so I had to go all the way back to step one. Actually, went back even -1 and came forward again. But I have them out there now. They're laying now, and so I'm actually in process of checking fertility and making sure they're breeding true and there's no recessives still hidden in there and all that good stuff. So they're still there, still working on it. But yeah, that's what that is. And that's Graufi. They look similar actually. So anyway, so select intentionally for what your purposes are. But if you don't understand if we use all the big words and you don't understand them, like roach back or crow face or crow head or sparrow beak or tiny eye or narrow shallow chest, if that doesn't make any sense to you, then just look at the bird for balance. And does it look right? And that is a good place to start. And then the other stuff will start coming together after that. Oh. And then if you're selecting for egg size, make sure how do I say this? Egg size can be determined by your feed. So if you feed a high protein feed, it can enlarge the eggs, not genetically, just falsely enlarge the eggs. Age of the bird, the eggs will get a little bit bigger, the shells will get a little bit thinner. So if you are breeding for egg size, you need to keep in mind all of the other influences and try to select forward as best you can, knowing that you're not inflating the size through protein or egg or hen age. and if you're selecting at 12 weeks, then the next generation you select at 12 weeks. So you got to track that pretty good. And then it's the last thing on egg size selection is if a hen prolapses, get rid of it. Don't put sugar on it or try to push it back in or whatnot. Now, a quail does look like it's partially prolapsing a little bit when it lays the egg. It's not like a chicken. So don't like freak out if you see something red come out with the egg and then it pops right back in. That's sort of normal. But if it comes out and stays out or is bulging, that's a prolapse.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and you just need to call that bird because that is an inheritable genetic trait and you don't want to breed that forward. So keep that in mind as you select for larger eggs. And selecting for larger eggs is a very, very slow process.
Yep.
It will be generations and years before you really start noticing any difference on that. So you have to just keep at that, hammering it.
Be patient.
Yep.
All right.
That's all I got.
I hope everybody enjoyed it. I hope they were able to learn a little bit about how we select and the things we look for, all that good stuff. And yeah, we will see you next time.
All right. Bye.